So this chapter opens up with us seeing like Class 1A, basically giving the audience a refresher on what's going on right now. Us seeing that Gigantomachia is currently being locked up. To me, that's like Chekhov's Machia, essentially. Like, he's for sure going to break out of that, and he's going to be involved in this final battle of the series. I mean, why wouldn't he, you know? Also, we're getting some updates on the end of series move sets of at least Bakugo and Todoroki here. Bakugo is going to be doing his cluster style, which involves sweat spheres, so it's as cool as it is disgusting. Todoroki, on the other hand, is trying to make his right and left halves into one, and I'm assuming that his end of series style is going to be based almost exclusively around like flash freeze type styling, because we see like his main move right now is flash freeze heat wave, but maybe this means that like essentially all of his moves are going to have that same kind of fundamental to them. So I just wanted to quickly get past that stuff, because the main thing that I want to talk about in this video is the traitor reveal. I mean, that's like the bulk of this chapter anyway. But if you would like to hear some of my extended thoughts on the first act of this chapter, you can check out the spoilers video I made yesterday. But anyway, at the end of the previous chapter, All for One was like essentially saying that UA being fortified is like irrelevant to his master plan because he has friends. And as he said that, we saw Hagakure in the final panel, which led to 99.6% of us to think that Hagakure was the traitor. But no, it turns out that that was actually a well-crafted red herring by Horikoshi, because the true traitor reveal is happening in this chapter, but we're seeing it from the perspective of Hagakure. But we come to her in this sequence, incognito in the forest, overhearing a conversation between none other than Aoyama and his parents, because it turns out Aoyama was the traitor this whole time. So Hagakure was keen enough to pick up on Aoyama's reaction to Izuku returning to UA. Apparently he wasn't as jovial as he always was. So then we hear his parents saying, "There's no other choice. We got another order from him. We'll just have to keep listening to him like we always have." And then they also clarify that they're allowed to speak in the forest here because this is like a blind spot from the UA surveillance apparently. But what this is all going to boil down to is that Aoyama was born quirkless. Twist there, but makes sense because Aoyama basically told the audience that this was the case without directly telling us. You know, the whole thing about how his body isn't compatible with his quirk. But because he was born quirkless and his parents loved him so much, just like many parents in our own reality, they would do anything to make their child happy, and in order to make him happy, they needed to give him a quirk. So one way or another, they found All for One, and he was like, "Hey, I'll give you guys a Subarashi quirk, but you gotta have to be my spy forever." And yeah, that's the story of the UA traitor. And of course, this also means that Aoyama and his parents are both reluctant. They don't want to be the traitor, and that's another thing that a lot of us suspected too. So then Hagakure reveals that she also has a teleportation quirk, and she teleports her and Izuku to where Aoyama is conversating with his parents. And I love how nonchalant Izuku is in this sequence. He's like, I heard something from Hagakure, something about the traitor being you, Aoyama, or something like that. And of course they're freaking out when they see him, but also, is this the first time that Izuku has ever said the word traitor in the series? Maybe not, but you'd be surprised how little the traitor is talked about. I know that's strange, but most of the traitor talk over the last 6 or 7 years has almost been exclusively through the community. But Izuku, like us, starts to put things together and realizes that, oh, it makes sense that you were the traitor this whole time. And then Aoyama just spills the beans. He's like, "Kamino, USJ, training camp, it was me, Izuku, I'm a scumbag villain." And then we see the cheese from, you know, that iconic scene where it says, "I know." And it makes sense, of course, because now we know what he knew. But anyway, to wrap this video up, I'm going to play some clips of what I said about Aoyama a couple months ago when we got that super spicy pic of him with that Shumagoraph thing released from that art exhibit. But before we go into that, let me just state that obviously I am not the one who spearheaded the Aoyama is the traitor campaign. People have been talking about this for years now, and I'm pretty sure that like Vocal Pineapple had that theory before I was even Zhoniin.
Very interesting that it's specifically Aoyama here
here that is getting this singular spotlight with this specific art piece, and with it having this ominous undertone to it. Because clearly Aoyama has been like oddly suspicious for a while now. And he was, and I guess still is, the front runner for a lot of people's top candidate for being the traitor. So a couple arcs ago, Aoyama was acting very strange around Izuku. And at that point in time, it kind of felt like Horikoshi may have been like shoving it in our face that Aoyama is suspicious, or that we're supposed to think that he's suspicious. Not even necessarily because he could be the traitor, but just for the sake of him being suspicious. But as that little minor storyline continued on, I guess it kind of fizzled out into us just believing that Aoyama was kind of just like a weird guy, and it ultimately boiled down to him seeing parallels with Izuku about how both of their quirks are not compatible with their bodies. And that was pretty much it. That's just where that went. Which led me to believe that, oh, I guess Aoyama was just a red herring, possibly. But now that we have this image of him, it makes me think maybe that wasn't a red herring. So let me also go over the other suspicious things that have happened with Aoyama throughout the series. The moment between Aoyama and Dabi in the training camp arc, about how it seemed like Dabi straight up sees Aoyama hiding behind the bushes, but then ultimately does nothing about it. But also how the anime and the manga handles this sequence differently. In the anime, it really makes it seem like they see each other. In fact, Aoyama even says, "Our eyes met," but in the manga sequence, it seems a little more ambiguous, and we don't get the "our eyes met" line, we get "did he sense me?" So I guess it's up in the air whether Dabi actually did see Aoyama or they didn't see each other, because, you know, the two conflicting continuities here. But the main takeaway from that is, like, if Dabi did see Aoyama, then that means that Aoyama was the traitor, and he ultimately was the one who told the League of Villains about the training camp, and Dabi knew this, so that's why he wasn't too concerned about Aoyama hiding behind the bushes, I guess. It's just a possibility. I'm not saying it's concrete or anything. But going back to the collab that I was in, Vocal Pineapple brings up the sequence in chapter 168 where Aoyama is like still acting weird around Izuku, where like using his laser, he engraves like a French phrase into the rock. And it turns out that it says "still water runs deep," which could also mean like it's the quiet ones you have to watch out for, or a wolf in sheep's clothing. And this right here is probably the most intriguing bit of evidence to support that Aoyama is either a traitor or has something to do with the traitor. Because going back to what I was talking about, how it fizzling out with Aoyama kind of just relating himself to Izuku, with them both having quirks that their bodies aren't compatible with, what does that phrase really have to do with that? That's way more ominous than anything, right? And now going back to this art exposition image makes me think that maybe that actually did mean something significant. And it takes me back to what I said about how this image is up for interpretation. Either Aoyama himself is the traitor and this Shumagorath type monster represents like the monster building up inside of him, like he's carrying this weight on his shoulders or something, like he is the traitor, but maybe he doesn't necessarily want to be the traitor. The eye could also represent how Aoyama is always watching from a distance, always paying attention to his classmates.
He is the traitor, but maybe he doesn't necessarily want to be the traitor. The eye could also represent how Aoyama is always watching from a distance, always paying attention to his classmates.